This video follows the engine strip part 1 and part 2, and you will have had a quick preview of the SRM crank, which you can now see me opening here. Well, SRM turned this round in about a week. It's come back very securely packaged. This is your crank with a completely new flywheel fitted and a whole load of drilling to bring it to spec. Looking good. Nice new bolts holding the flywheel onto the crank. New sludge trap with a hex socket on it, dinked over very securely, threads protected, bearings protected, threads protected. That looks pretty good. Tape on your big journals. So that's that done. That's your crank. What's we got here then? Ah, no, those are your old rods. These are your new rods. They look very good. Pepper lights look excellent. Well, as you know, it's a fairly simple process. As long as you've got the factory tools, it all goes together reasonably simply. Right, I think your big old ball main bearing is fine. Right, this is the first trial fit of the crank in the cases now that it's back from SRM. You can see the flywheel through the sump plate, and if you apply gentle leverage to the flywheel, you can lift the crank. So that is now down. Let's see how high it will go. Yeah, 67 thou. So that's what we've got to shim out. 65 of that's got to go. Right, so this is reassembled now with the right number of shims, we think. So your crank spins very nicely, so it's not tight. Then if we come up here and have a look what the dial gauge says, that is now set on 0. And you can see how much play we get when we move the crank up and down. So that is between 1.5 and 2. Let's get a really accurate measure on that. That is 1.5. Okay, so this is preparing the crank for reassembly now. We've done the shimming. So it's important to make sure you primed the center of the crank with oil, and you can see left and right of the flywheel the oil coming out the big ends. So we're happy there's oil in there. That's primed it for the first few revs. Okay, so all the big end bolts have been mic'd up and their lengths recorded. There is a recommended torque setting for these, but the real way to do it is to measure the bolt stretch. So that's what we'll do now. These are going finger tight. We already know their length. We're then going to torque these to the minimum setting recommended by Hepalite. You're supposed to approach it in stages, 15, 20 and 30 foot-pounds. So to begin with, we've done 15 foot-pounds by hand. We're now going to go to 20 foot-pounds on the torque wrench. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's all 4 big ends done to 20 foot-pounds. Just to be pedantic, we'll go to 25, 26, we'll go to 26. Slight movement, that's nice. Same movement, all looks good. So these are now at 26. The trick is now to measure the stretch. So that is now reading 42. That is now reading 42. It was 35. So there is a stretch going on. Get back to you, continue the process. Okay, big ends are torqued up. On my torque wrench, I went to 33, 34 foot-pounds. That's slightly more than spec, but my torque wrench isn't calibrated. The reason I've stopped there is that I've got the correct stretch on the big end bolts as measured with a decent micrometer. So now you can see both rods move very freely and they fall at the same rate. So that's done. So we know now that the crank is correctly shimmed for end float, and we know that the rods have been applied correctly. So we're now going to put the cases together and use the base of the barrel to make sure that they go together absolutely square. And don't forget this last nut that holds the cases together inside the crankcase mouths, and treat it with respect because they have been broken by many a ham-fisted owner. Now we know that the cases have gone together square, we can remove the barrels, remove the protection to the rods and fit the pistons. Next the barrels go on, and don't forget that all those base nuts bar 2 at the back have to be fitted before you drop the barrel completely down. Next the timing chest goes back together, oil pump, intermediate gear, cam timing's fairly straightforward from the marks on the pinions. Then the outer cover goes on. Then we fit the Payson rotor and stator, turn the engine over, fit the primary side and try and find the Woodruff key. Right, need to make a Woodruff key. So it's 4.15 was the target. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, so we cut, the radius is correct. We cut the segment off and we're done. Next we fit the primary side, the clutch basket, the sprocket and the primary chain. Assemble the clutch center with its 20 rollers, much easier to do when the engine's on its side. Then we fit the alternator, the new stator, and then we remove the new stator because the studs need reclaiming. Now the studs are okay, the new stator goes back on, clutch plates, and finally the sump plate. So we've got dial gauge above the pistons, so I can bring this up to TDC, which is there, and I can wind it back 34 degrees on a degree plate here, and I've marked up my 34 degree point bang on there. So that's your timing mark sorted out. So I'll set your timing up statically, 34 degrees here. You go around the other side and we do the Payson rotor. The next job is to time the ignition. This is a Payson. The BSA uses the anti-clockwise timing mark, and you can see the red mark of the rotor through the window. Static timing is pretty good. It's worth strobing later, but you probably won't find much difference. These surfaces have been cleaned up, but I haven't had the head to bits. Okay, 10844, don't know what that means. Cylinder head. Nice thing about BSA is that the rods, push rods, go in after you put the head on. Makes life a bit more simple than a Norton. Right, that's your cylinder head on. We can have a little look at how the push rods go in. And I need to do the nuts up. So, crack on with that. So if you're paying attention during the strip, you'll know this is a 9 stud head. There are 4 obvious ones inside the cylinder head, 1 deep down inside, you can see now, and 4 more on the outside of the rocker box, fore and aft of the spark plug holes. So tighten them up as usual, best practice, torque settings as in the book, try and use a radial pattern to tighten everything down. With the head torqued down, you can reinstall the exhaust rocker shaft. Be careful about how the shims and Thackeray washers go there. If you've got time to spare, have some full-size shims made up and get rid of the Thackeray washers. Now you can drop in the push rods, make sure they're engaged at the bottom and the top. There are 2 longs and 2 shorts, but fortunately it's impossible to get them wrong. Having done that, you can set up the tappets. Right, head's on, rockers are correctly fitted, and if you watch carefully, you will see. There you go. This one's moving, this one's moving. Now this one's moving back. This one's going. You see them all? That's it. Alright, tappets are set 8 and 10. All we can do now is the last detail. There you go, Chris, all done. I'm going to give you some notes because obviously the engine's not in the bike. 2 or 3 things. The slipper for the primary chain we couldn't find, but that's very easy because it's just behind here. You need to adjust the clutch once you've got it mounted up to the handlebars, and you can spin the clutch with a clutch lever pulled in and watch how the plate wobbles. This cover is on without a gasket. I've got a brand new gasket for you. This thing here isn't standard. Somebody's helicoiled it with something out of a biro. Really strange. Apart from that, everything's done. Timing's done. All Tappets are done. I think it'll be okay now. Good luck sticking it back in the bike.